next talk, I'd like to introduce the CEO of Wyzer, Daniel Grech, who's going to be talking to us about the science of risk-taking. Very cool title. Daniel Grech, finally.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Delta Summit. My name is Daniel Grech, and I'm a co-founder of a tech company called Wyzer. So throughout the past 2 years, I've been experiencing for the first time what it feels like to be an entrepreneur. And despite all the books that I had read and all the theories that I had in my head before, nothing really prepares you for being an entrepreneur other than actually being one. So, in general, when you have skin in the game and when you're actually put your life on the line for something, you tend to learn things much quicker. And one of the first things that I learned as an entrepreneur is that entrepreneurship is a game of risk-taking. So just as there's no such thing as a free lunch, there's not really many scenarios where you have a whole lot of upside without actually incurring some form of risk. So all successful entrepreneurs have some kind of strategy by which they take risk. The second thing that you realize pretty early on is that entrepreneurship is also a survival game. So in order to succeed, you must first survive. And pretty much all risk takers who are successful in what they do have some version of this motto inside their head. Now, the way I like to visualize this is that running a company is similar to being the captain of a ship. So a ship with no motor that's kind of flowing down a river. And as this captain, you have no control over the external environment that you're operating in. So you can't control the movements of the river. And as you're flowing down the river, the best thing that you can do is do your best to avoid the different obstacles that tend to present themselves in your way, in this way. And luckily enough, I wasted or maybe used 2 years of my life actually studying a lot of statistics. And statistics gives us very structured ways about how to think about this, so about how to take decisions in the light of uncertainty. A lot of these frameworks really boil down to doing a couple of things. So basically, what statistics tells you to do in order to take a decision is to, first of all, list all the possible options that are available to you at that point in time. For each option, you then need to further list every single outcome that can result as a result of taking that option. And then, for each outcome, you also need to decide how probable that outcome is and the utility of that outcome. So a kind of P&L indicating how good or bad that outcome is for you. And with all this information at hand, decision-making becomes really easy. So if you're capable of coming up with all these numbers, then choosing the optimal decision is literally as easy as calculating your expected gain, so how much you expect to gain for each possible option, and choosing the one which maximizes that. Now, what tends to happen in real life is that these frameworks are pretty much useless. For the simple reason that in real life, it's very rare that you're able to calculate the probability of every single outcome available to you. Furthermore, it's actually even rarer that you're able to know beforehand how good or bad a particular outcome may be to you in the future. Now, this matter is made a bit more complicated due to the fact that our mind tends to play a lot of tricks on us. So no matter how logical and rational we like to be, and analytical we like to think of ourselves as, in actual fact, our brain just simply cannot process all the information that throws itself at us on a daily basis. So in order to make decisions, our brain needs to take a bunch of shortcuts. And these shortcuts mean that every single one of us here has a number of blind spots when they're thinking about taking a decision. Now, one of these blind spots is actually a blind spot towards rare events. So in our mind, in order to simplify the world around us, our mind tells us to not worry too much about events which are not likely. And our mind also kind of downplays the impact that these events can possibly have on our life. And the way I like to think about this, so if something is very unlikely, then by definition, it's kind of very hard to predict. So we're not that good at predicting very low probability events. So a bit of an analogy, I like to think of this thought process by looking at what goes through the mind of a turkey on a day-to-day basis. So if a turkey lives for 1,001 days, for the first 1,000 days, this turkey thinks that human beings are awesome. So human beings feed the turkey, human beings give shelter to the turkey, human beings actually protect the turkey from other animals that might kill it. And every single day, the turkey reinforces this idea that human beings are awesome and human beings just love turkeys. We all know what happens on the 1,001st day. So with this kind of, as naive as this may sound, what this kind of teaches us is that by observing a process for a period of time, it doesn't really mean that we are capable of making predictions over that process, and it means that we aren't really capable of knowing necessarily what's going to happen in the future. So our mind thinks this way because it's kind of simpler to think of things in a linear fashion. So it's simpler to think that the result of who we are today is simply an incremented sum of everything that happened to us in our life in a linear fashion. However, in more complex domains, that's not really how things work. So in domains like finance, business, and pretty much any domain where it merits a study into how human beings take risks, what tends to happen is that we observe periods of time where volatility is very low. So we observe long periods of time where not much changes. And then suddenly things tend to blow up in one direction or another. Historically, as human beings, we've also proved that we're completely incapable of timing when these large events will actually happen. So maybe basing a risk strategy solely on probability doesn't make so much sense in light of the fact that we know that we cannot predict these events. So rather than thinking only in terms of probability, what I'd like to encourage today is to have a strategy towards managing the risk of ruin. So these sort of strategies can be defined into two different categories. So there are things which are fragile, and there are things which are anti-fragile. So things which are fragile do not like uncertainty. Things which are fragile have a lot more downside than upside from random events. On the other hand, things which are anti-fragile behave in exactly the opposite way. So things which are anti-fragile gain much more than they lose from random events. Now, in order to be successful in the risk-taking business, one needs to adopt an anti-fragile approach. So the only thing that's certain in a lot of fields is that uncertainty is going to be present, and uncertainty is the only certainty. Therefore, rather than just thinking in terms of utility, probability, and traditional statistical methods, it makes much more sense to position ourselves in such a way that we gain from uncertainty, that we like randomness. And pretty much all successful people in the risk-taking business love failure. So successful people might not be so great at being successful, but what they're definitely great at is failing. So in order to be successful, you need to learn how to fail quickly. Learn how to fail in a way that doesn't kill you, and learn how to fail in a way that doesn't negatively impact you too much. Now, Warren Buffett once said in a private investor meeting, once said that he would only invest in a company if it can be run by an idiot. And funny enough, I think this is quite a good analogy as to how we should position ourselves when we take risks. So in my mind, a good entrepreneur is an entrepreneur who manages to build a company that can even be run by an idiot. And if this company is anti-fragile enough to withstand the test of time, then in all likelihood, in all probability, it will at some time end up actually being run by an idiot. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.